I appreciate the opportunity to rise tonight to address the very serious attacks on Canada's supply-managed sectors by the American government and the lack of leadership and strength against this attack from the Liberal government. The NAFTA renegotiations began in August, but even before that, Donald Trump took aim at our dairy farmers, stating, quote, "We can't let Canada or anybody else take advantage and do what they did to our workers and our farmers." Trump has continually been belligerent, accusing Canada of violating global trade obligations, and our Prime Minister simply sits beside him, stunned and grinning. And just last Sunday, the U.S. NAFTA negotiating team said that they want Canadian access for 400,000 metric tons of fluid milk and 17% of our poultry products. Under the Trans-Pacific Partnership, Canada granted access to 3.25% of its dairy market and 2.1% of its market for chicken. Since the U.S. has withdrawn from TPP, they're looking for even greater concessions under NAFTA. There was never any doubt from this side of the House that supply management would be under attack. The only surprise seems to be from the government. The former Conservatives and the current Liberal governments showed a real lack of forethought when they opened the door and market access to our supply-managed sectors under trade deals like TPP and CETA. And because of their poor judgment now, they have created a space for the Americans to demand concessions that this government must not make. In fact, I would like to talk about CETA here, Madam Speaker. The Comprehensive and Economic Trade Agreement, this is a trade deal that the Conservatives wrote and the Liberals rammed through Parliament. The Liberals didn't consult adequately with farmers or producers, and they didn't provide adequate compensation programs to the losses our dairy farmers have endured. Instead, the Liberal government only agreed to a controversial investment assistance program, and after only a week of it being open, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada announced it would no longer accept any applications from dairy farmers. Without access to the compensation that is owed to them and a lack of funds, several dairy producers are now hitting a wall. During the 2015 campaign, the election, the Liberals promised to compensate dairy producers for concessions made during CETA negotiations, but they backtracked on this investment program. Sadly, it's not the first time that Liberals have harmed dairy producers or other farmers protected by our supply-managed system. Since taking office, the Liberal government have been completely inactive in the raw milk sector, and they succumbed to the European Union regarding the allocation of the tariff quotas. The NDP have repeatedly warned this government that dairy producers would suffer with only the $250 million allocated. But they have pushed through with this bad trade deal anyway, and now we see them letting these same farmers down during the renegotiation of NAFTA. Canadian farmers have benefited from the supply-managed system since the early 70s. This system sets the price and creates stability for dairy, egg, and poultry producers. Supply management has proven to be an effective model that equalizes the benefits of dairy and poultry production across consumers, farmers, and processors, and stabilizes the industry against price shocks or oversupply. This attack on supply management cannot continue. And so my question once again to the Liberal government is, will they show real leadership and finally tell the U.S. that supply management and further market access is not on the table?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the member for Essex for having raised this important question. The government fully supports the supply management system, dairy producers, and the dairy industry as a whole. Dairy producers and chicken and egg producers play an important role in the long-term sustainable growth of our country. Supply management is a system that our producers chose themselves and which has been working well for many years. It benefits the Canadian economy, and I can assure you that we will protect it and defend it. As far as trade negotiations are concerned, Canada's position has always been promoting and defending the interests of the of all of these sectors within the agricultural sector, including those under supply management. Import controls are an important pillar of supply management, so it is important for the government to maintain their effectiveness while ensuring the competitiveness of the processing sector, including as part of trade negotiations. As far as NAFTA is concerned, Canada and the U.S. both benefit from highly integrated and efficient supply chains which have been created by this agreement. The fact that Canada and the U.S. are the biggest agricultural trading partners for each other is a testament to that fact. In August 2017, Canada, the U.S., and Mexico started negotiations about modernizing NAFTA in Washington, D.C. The last round happened between October 11th and 17th. The Government of Canada is leading consultations about NAFTA negotiations by consulting Canadians all across the country from all sectors, including those under supply management. These NAFTA consultations will continue throughout our negotiations. Global Affairs Canada will maintain an open line of dialogue to that end. The member for Essex can rest assured that these consultations will be taken into consideration and that Canada will only accept a renegotiated NAFTA that benefits Canadians. Like any other country, we will vigorously defend our interests in all sectors, including those under supply management. Any proposal from the U.S. to eliminate supply management would simply be unacceptable. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Essex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I have to say that I'm surprised, but happy to hear the member across saying that they will not accept that at the table. So at this point, I hope that that's being communicated well across our country and that everyone will be watching tonight and hear the parliamentary secretary say that we will not open supply management. And so my question really goes back to the member, and it has to do with where we're at now in these negotiations. Of course, we've had the U.S. throw this on the table, and from what I can hear from the member across, he's saying quite clearly then that we will not enter into negotiations around that, and that potentially we will leave the table, or I'm not sure what the option is, but I would like to hear from the member on what it is that the Liberals have planned at this point to communicate that to the U.S., because I haven't heard that quite so strongly from the minister. So I wonder if the member opposite could enlighten us in this House on how they plan to communicate that to the U.S. and what their plan is now at the negotiating table around this issue.
None that up.